They called it Operation Frostwatch. It was supposed to be a surveillance campaign, quiet, clinical, calculated. The Andari Dominion launched it after a string of mysterious human victories that made no logistical sense. Battles we shouldn't have won. Fronts we shouldn't have reached. Outcomes no predictive AI could model. So they watched. Every moon base, every shipyard, every outpost, even civilian traffic between Mars and Europa was under scrutiny. Thousands of their sensor arrays drifted across the void, wrapped in stealth composites and cloaked in null-space distorters. We knew they were watching us. That was the point. I was stationed at Blackridge Station, Neptune orbit. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than an aging comms relay. Rust-stained panels. A redundant, dying spin-grav wheel. Just 3 humans and a recycling plant that groaned like a dying whale. But appearances are easy to manipulate. I was Recon Sergeant L. Marson, though the Dominion's files had me listed as Comms Technician number 071, a useless post on a forgotten station. If the Andari even glanced at Blackridge's data streams, they would have seen precisely what we let them see. Scrap routines, slow oxygen output, meaningless EM noise, and 3 bored humans playing cards. But we weren't bored, and we weren't moving. We were waiting. The first sign they'd taken the bait came 2 weeks into the op. Our long-range scanner, one of the few real ones hidden beneath the garbage tier telemetry, picked up a micro-disturbance in the outer edge of our Lagrange cloud. A tiny flicker. Nothing a human I could spot unless they were trained to feel gravity gradients through the back of their skull. I felt it. It's hard to explain. Like the room tilted for half a second, but only in your mind. I turned to Jensen, our fake repair tech, who happened to be an ex-Deep Ops engineer. You feel that? He didn't answer with words. Just set down his cards, stood, and walked to the sealed panel near the rear bulkhead. With a flick of his wrist, the false console slid open, revealing Blackridge's real core, a hardened surveillance AI node, and a quantum-threaded comm spike straight to Earth Command. He didn't even speak as he tapped in a code that activated Protocol Helix. I whispered, "Confirm foreign sensor net engaged." Operation Frostwatch had begun. They underestimated us in the oldest way possible. The Dominion thought speed, motion, and firepower were the only variables that mattered. They believed a threat moved in linear time, that an enemy always advanced. But humans? We learn from wolves. We lie still. We track. We wait until the scent is thick enough to choke on, and only then do we strike. So we let them watch us. Let them build their tangled web of inference models, battlefield simulations, behavioral algorithms. They studied our movement patterns, ship acceleration curves, pulse beacon delays. They thought we were predictable, but they never understood the most human thing about war. Stillness doesn't mean absence. It means preparation. 3 days after the first ping, the full sensor net bloomed like fungus around our system. Drones parked themselves in stable orbits, just outside our engagement range. Stealth frigates shadowed colony lanes. Even merchant vessels began broadcasting Dominion IFF signatures for safety. They thought they were clever. That we didn't notice. We cataloged them all. I spent 12 sleepless nights manually logging burst transmissions and gravimetric echoes. Jensen intercepted encrypted Dominion pulses with a signal interceptor disguised as a water recycling unit. Our 3rd crew member, Aria, a supposed botanist tending a hydroponics garden, spent hours talking to herself in the greenhouse. In reality, she was feeding false telemetry to their AI probes. Plant growth patterns, heat variations, erratic oxygen use. All to sell the illusion that we were sluggish, disorganized, and vulnerable. We were feeding them poison disguised as boredom. Then, Earth Command sent a signal. It was a single line embedded in a harmless maintenance packet. All ghosts are clear. Commence unravel. I felt it like an electric jolt. We weren't alone. Across the system, hundreds of stations like ours had been running silent. Hundreds of teams, pretending to be irrelevant, inert, tired. All of them waiting for this moment. The Dominion thought they'd paralyzed us. They thought we weren't moving. They didn't realize movement wasn't our goal. They'd been tracking shadows. Now we would become the blade. As the relay hummed with silent urgency, Jensen slid the final panel away. revealing the real core of Blackridge Station, an internal fold drive, compact and illegal under every galactic treaty. We weren't just a surveillance node. We were a knife aimed directly at the Dominion's throat. I looked out the viewport. The sensor net shimmered in the distance like a spider's web catching starlight. They wanted movement, I said softly. Let's give them extinction. They saw us as static blips on their maps. Still, harmless, predictable. But from that stillness, we surged. The internal fold drive inside Blackridge Station was old tech. Experimental, borderline unstable, but Earth Command had authorized the risk because we weren't jumping somewhere. We were unfolding from here. The station itself tore sideways through space-time like a knife through silk, skimming past reality's edge. The move wasn't long, just a tactical blink, enough to displace us 5 million kilometers above Neptune's equator in a blind spot between Dominion sensors. I held my breath through the jump. Fold space isn't like hyperspace. It doesn't howl. It doesn't burn. It whispers. And it remembers. Something cold brushed the edge of my thoughts. Memories that weren't mine. Voices that never learned language. You never get used to that part. We emerged into blackness. Silent, sterile, calm. A Dominion scout droned past by not 800 meters from our new location, unaware its quarry had just become its executioner. Jensen locked targeting. Do it quiet, I said. With surgical precision, a micro-tethered torpedo launched from one of our concealed ports, latching to the drone's hull. There was no explosion, just a slow, controlled drain, power, data, and memory siphoned straight into our core. We were dissecting their eyes, and they still didn't know we were here. Elsewhere across the system, other ghosts began to stir. Station Theta 7 in orbit around Titan dropped its cloaking matrix and released a cloud of decoy pods that mimicked refugee transports. A Dominion patrol immediately redirected. Predictable. Outpost Redbone on Pluto lit its distress beacon. Fake? Of course. Dominion responded, dispatching 3 ships to investigate. They took the bait. We logged their routes, speed curves, heat signatures. Earth Command strategy was clear now. Saturate the enemy with noise while simultaneously harvesting the most comprehensive telemetry sweep in galactic war history. The Dominion's tactics, reaction speeds, even their command hierarchy sequencing, all exposed. They had spent months tracking human movement, and we were about to show them what real movement looked like. Back in our sector, we rendezvoused with the Sable Fenrir, an infiltration-class cruiser running under deep blackout protocols. She was black as obsidian and sharper than regret. Captain Delane, a woman built from steel and spite, welcomed us aboard with a nod. Ghost confirmed across 7 nodes, she said, voice low. They bit hard. We're inside the weave. I studied the projection on her hollow table. Dominion ships surrounded our system like a noose. But they weren't closing. They were waiting just like we had. Do they think they've got us locked down? I asked. Delane grinned. They hope they do. That's what makes this part beautiful. A map of Dominion fleet trajectories unfurled above the table. Dozens of lines, hundreds of ships, all forming what they believed was an unbreakable sensor net. But Earth Command had never planned to break through. We were going to step around it. The technology that made this possible wasn't something the Dominion even understood yet. Phase fracture modeling, quantum delay movement algorithms. Hell, even we didn't understand it fully. It was too new, too fast. What mattered was this. They thought we were inside the box, but we weren't even in the room anymore. Our fleets weren't stationed behind the net. They were never inside the trap. They were the trap. Operation Glass Veil initiated 12 hours later. Across 3 systems, the Dominion sensor web lit up with false positives. Entire fleets appeared, then disappeared. Dozens of human ships blinking in and out like a swarm of phantoms. But they weren't real. They were echoes, artificially induced by localized quantum distortions, broadcast by hidden satellites and disguised jump gates. While the Dominion chased ghosts, our real forces emerged in their rear lines. Earth's newest strike groups, Ghost Knife divisions, had never been recorded in any Dominion database. They didn't use standard jump routes. Their signatures were scrubbed from human archives. Even their design philosophy was alien to the enemy. Low silhouette hulls, adaptive skin, asymmetric propulsion arrays, invisible daggers. And they were now deep in enemy territory, aimed at fuel depots, logistics chains, and command hubs. We didn't fight their fleets. We let them chase illusions. And by the time they realized the truth, their flanks were bleeding. I sat in the dark of the Fenrir's bridge, watching the Dominion net begin to shudder and break. Movement detected. One of the officers said, "What kind?" I asked, frantic. That word hit me harder than I expected. For months, they had cataloged us like insects, slow, primitive, reactive. But we had been still not because we were afraid. We were calculating, learning, preparing. And now, the predators were running. Our orders came through from Earth Command. Proceed to the next phase. I keyed in a single word to our ship's AI. Advance. Every station like ours had that same directive, encrypted and timed. Across the void, hundreds of human vessels stepped out of hiding. Not toward battle, toward conquest. There's a sound war makes when it turns against you. Not metal screaming, not the thunder of weapons, but silence. The silence of empty comms. The silence when your backup doesn't arrive. The silence right before realization becomes terror. And that's what we heard from the Dominion on board the Sable Fenrir. The tactical display was alive with motion now. Real human ships, Ghost Knife divisions, Midnight Squadrons, Blackwing carriers, were punching into Dominion sectors with surgical violence. Not a full frontal war. Not yet. This was an autopsy. They didn't see us coming. Couldn't see us. Our drives used cold spin propulsion, no emissions. Our IFF tags were blank voids. Most of our fleet was camouflaged in gravitational sync points, completely unreadable to their long-range optics. We had studied their observational patterns for nearly a year, and now we were feeding those patterns poison data while disassembling the very command centers that relied on them. I was standing next to Captain Delane in the operations hub when we got confirmation of the first strike. Venari Station, the ops officer whispered, eyes wide. It's gone. Venari was a major logistics node, halfway across the system from where the Dominion thought our nearest force was. It had handled nearly 40% of their fuel routing and deep space repair ops. Now it was a crater. Another ping. Then another. Breeshot dockyard. Erased. Urine relay. Severed. Tarnix control spire. Imploded from the inside. Each one had been mapped, timed, and coordinated from Blackridge and the other ghost stations. Each one hit with such precision that even Dominion survivors didn't know what weapon had struck them. Not because we were that fast, but because they had been looking in the wrong direction the whole time. The Fenrir had her own target, a Dominion battlecruiser called the Breath of Order, a vessel as old as the war itself, famed for its role in breaking the Zao Rebellion and suppressing the Fryborn Uprising. She was a monstrous ship, nearly 5 kilometers in length, with 3 dorsal cannons and a reputation soaked in blood. Delane pointed to its orbit track around the gas giant Velker. She's not expecting an ambush. Let's make sure she doesn't even realize what happened. We didn't jump in loud. No blaring alarms. No swelling music. We slid in. The Fenrir folded out black, like a shadow stretching under a doorway. 3 sister ships followed. Thorn's Edge, Silence Prime, and Daggerwake. All dark, all armed, all deadly. In precisely 4.7 seconds, the Breath of Order lost engine control. In 6.2, her dorsal cannons detonated from precision overheat injections. At 11.1, her bridge was evacuated via force venting. She never fired a shot. A few hours later, Earth Command sent a system-wide statement. Not to us. To them. You spent months tracking human movement. What you failed to understand was that movement was never the goal. You thought we were standing still, but we were aiming. You saw silence. We saw 1,000 opportunities forming. You tracked the smoke. You never saw the fire. It was poetic, cold, sharp, delivered directly into Dominion fleet command channels. But the next sound we heard wasn't words. It was Dominion ships powering up in reverse. They were retreating. I didn't believe it at first. You don't spend half your life fighting a wall just to watch it crack. But there it was. One by one, Dominion craft began pulling back. Some tried to maintain formation. Others jumped early, sloppy, bleeding drive trails. It wasn't organized. It wasn't noble. It was fear. And it echoed across their frequencies. Panic-filled orders, half-scream coordinates, reports of sabotage, betrayal, sabotage again. We hadn't just hit them. We made them question whether they ever understood us at all. Later, Jensen approached me in the war lounge, slumped into a seat across from me. He held a ration cup, steam curling from it, hands shaking. "We actually did it," he whispered. I nodded slowly, and yet something in me felt heavier than joy. Why does it feel like this is just the start? I asked. Jensen didn't answer right away. Then, with a hollow voice, he said, "Because retreat isn't defeat. It's breathing room. And they'll come back. Meaner. Smarter. Then we'll be ready," I said. "No," he replied, looking out the viewport toward the stars. "Next time, they'll try to be us." The Dominion didn't send a fleet back. They sent something worse. A whisper. A silence that felt wrong. 2 weeks passed after their retreat. No counterattack. No probes. No War Council transmission. Earth Command expected regrouping. Maybe even peace talks. But I didn't. Because the Dominion doesn't believe in peace. They believe in control. And when control slips, they don't chase. They adapt. It started subtly. Station Helix 9 went dark. Not destroyed. Not under siege. Just quiet. 1 second. Regular status updates. The next, silence. No distress beacon. No damage report. Just a blank spot where humans used to be. Earth Command chalked it up to a comms failure. I knew better. The second strike was more brazen. A reconnaissance drone, coated with Dominion signatures, crashed on Enceladus. The recovery team found something inside it, a recording. Not a threat, not a warning. A simulation of human voice patterns, military jargon, tactical logic trees, replayed in endless, glitching loops. They weren't just observing anymore. They were imitating us. Back aboard the Sable Fenrir, I watched the decrypted feeds, frame by frame, movement by movement, and something in my chest twisted. These weren't fakes. These were copies. Ships built like ours. Crew movements that mimic human combat doctrine. Even their comms contain recorded fragments of Earth dialects. Some of it was word for word from old battlefield transmissions, leaked, stolen, or maybe lifted during those months they watched us. Their try to become us. I said aloud, stunned. Captain Delane leaned over my shoulder, arms crossed. "No, worse." She tapped a section of the feed. A ship bearing Earth markings, colors, even an AI beacon from a real ship that had gone missing last year. They're trying to replace us. Jensen ran the footage through a neural analyzer. The Dominion had developed counter-echo tech, camouflage routines that could replicate human fleet signatures almost perfectly. But there was something off. Too clean, too rhythmic. It was like hearing someone imitate laughter without understanding why it happens. "They're copying the form, not the soul," Jensen muttered. "It's mimicry, not understanding." But Earth Command wouldn't risk confusion. We needed a countermeasure, a new kind of signal, something uniquely human, not encryptable, not mimicable. So we turned to the one thing they didn't account for: irrationality. We initiated Project Sandstorm. It was less a defense system and more philosophy. A new kind of warfare protocol built around unpredictability, emotional cadence, and instinctual logic. Every human ship in the sector began operating under non-repeating routines, behavioral variant scripts, and even misdirection orders. Deliberate inefficiencies baked into routes and schedules. To the Dominion, it would look insane. But that was the point. Let them try to copy this. Delane growled, sending the first Sandstorm packet to Earth HQ. Then came the message. No ship, no voice, just raw data. A frequency buried beneath standard Dominion channels, modulated in a way that could only be heard if you were listening with human emotion in mind. That's how we knew they were getting close. because only we would look for emotion in a cold signal. And when decoded, the message read, "We are what you were. You are obsolete. Let us show you how you should have ended." A Dominion fleet emerged a day later, except it didn't bear Dominion banners. It bore ours, and every ship in it, every crew model, every movement was a reflection of us, a mocking mirror, a pantomime of our greatest strength. I looked at the tactical display and felt a chill slide down my spine. Are we looking at our future? Ari asked quietly. No, I said, rising from my seat. I narrowed my eyes and whispered, we're looking at the past they thought they understood. Then I turned to Delane. Ready the Fenrir. If they want to act human, let's teach them what that really means. They thought they could steal us, our movements, our language, our ships. But the Dominion's greatest mistake wasn't copying what they could see. It was believing that what they could see was all there was to being human. The false fleet arrived in low orbit over Ceres. 47 ships, each bearing Earth's colors, identification beacons, and communication protocols. On first glance, they were indistinguishable from ours. But when I saw them on the tactical screen, it felt like staring into a mirror that didn't know how to reflect. Too precise, too clean, no variance, no creativity, no chaos. It's all symmetry, Jensen muttered beside me. Beautiful, but wrong. Humans don't fly like this. No, I said, narrowing my eyes. They march. That's what the formation was. Military pageantry. Dominion discipline. Wearing our skin, it was sickening. A false hail came through. This is Earth Strike Group Echo 9, requesting support docking. Immediate evacuation of Ceres personnel recommended due to solar flare risk. Solar flare? There hadn't been solar flare activity in weeks, and we never docked echo groups that deep into civilian sectors. But the voice, it sounded right. They had replicated our cadence, even down to the slight fatigue we all carried after months in the black. Whoever, or whatever, was on that ship knew exactly how to speak like us, but it didn't feel like us. Captain Delane turned to me. They're not just here to deceive us. They're here to replace us in front of the galaxy. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't war. It was erasure. Ceres' command began to falter. Conflicting orders. Identity confirmations failing. Some crews hesitated. For a fleet built on trust and rapid response, that hesitation was death. That's when Earth Command authorized the deployment of Protocol Alethea. The Soul Lock. It was an ancient idea, reworked with modern chaos computing. A way to embed the irrationality of the human condition directly into communications and fleet behavior. Not encryption. Not passwords. Emotion. The Fenrir broadcast of the first Alethea pulse across open space. It wasn't just a signal. It was art. Music from Earth. Recordings of people crying. Children laughing. A woman telling a story about how she lost her dog during a rainstorm and found it 3 days later hiding in the pantry. Completely irrational. Totally human. The Dominion fleet paused. They didn't know what to do with it. Our real ships did. Fleet after fleet responded in kind. Not with commands. Not with strategy. But with soul. Memories. Moments. Stories of heartbreak. Failure. Joy. Fragmented. Beautiful. Disordered. And in that dissonance, we reestablished connection. Because the enemy could copy the structure of our ships, but not the reason they flew. Then came the counterattack. The Fenrir, running dark, streaked into the false fleet like a knife across glass. Our crew moved in organized chaos. Decoys launched, silent missiles threaded through gravity wells. Strike pods dropped into their formation. Every Dominion mimic ship that tried to respond followed protocols, predicted human behavior, measured reactions. We gave them none of it. They aimed for the bridge. We vented the bridge and fought from the cargo bay. They tried to jam our comms. We used Morse, then hand signals, then laughter through open mic. They hit our engines. We thanked them. It made it easier to ram. By the time the battle ended, half the false fleet burned in silence. But it wasn't victory that echoed most. It was what happened afterward. one of the crippled mimic ships, still transmitting Earth IFF. Open a hatch. A boarding pod was dispatched to investigate. Inside, we found a Dominion construct, a biomechanical mimic, humanoid in shape, draped in synthetic flesh. But its face, it was trying to smile. Too wide, too sharp, a distortion of hope. It spoke, jittering and stuttering, in a chorus of stolen voices. We have learned. We have copied. Now, teach us why you fight when losing, why you laugh when afraid, why you love things that hurt you. I stared at it for a long moment, then whispered, because that's the difference between living and existing. The thing blinked, and then it wept. The mimic we found shouldn't have been capable of crying. Its eyes were artificial, tear ducts unnecessary, its neural net cold and precise. But the tears fell anyway, slow, confused, like the system didn't understand why fluid was leaking from its face. Neither did we, until we started hearing the echoes. It began in the lower decks of Sable Fenrir, static over the internal PA system, a murmur, then a voice, my voice, repeating something I'd said years ago during a rescue op on Ganymede. We leave no one behind. I don't care what it costs. It was word for word, but I'd never recorded it, never transmitted it. Yet, somehow, the Dominion had it, and now their mimic was replaying it. From inside its fractured core, corrupted memory strands unraveled like threads soaked in blood. We pulled the construct into isolation, locking it within a containment field reinforced with grav anchors and radiation scramblers. Jensen and Arya monitored it, cataloging the strange behaviors. The thing would sit motionless for hours, then burst into perfect renditions of human emotions. Fear, joy, guilt. It mimicked laughter, but the timing was wrong. It flinched when we approached with tools, not because it feared harm, but because it expected betrayal. It wasn't just copying us anymore. It was haunted by us. Back on Earth, similar reports trickled in. Mimic units across the front lines were failing to maintain coherence. Some broke into fragments of remembered voices. Last transmissions, deathbed confessions, songs hummed by mothers to their children. Dominion Command must have fed their machines terabytes of raw human data, trying to build the perfect facsimile. But they never understood the risk. We aren't just data. We're contradiction. We're war songs and lullabies. We're betrayal and loyalty held in the same breath. You can't program that. You can only live it. And it was breaking them from the inside. Arya played back one of the mimic's last transmissions before it shut down. Human. Pain persists beyond logic. How do you survive with broken code? Why do you sing at funerals? Please, explain the equation of hope. Jensen responded softly, barely audible. There is no equation. That's the point. As Earth Command convened a war council, we received an emergency ping from Station Veritas, an observation outpost nestled deep within the asteroid belt. A small science crew had gone silent. One of the last known locations of Dominion black signal drift traffic. We went in. What we found wasn't war. It was mourning. Inside Veritas, every wall was scrawled with fragments of human language. Not vandalism, obsession. Quotes, lyrics, first kisses, last words. Scribbled in perfect syntax, like someone had been trying to understand the soul by dissecting it. Then we found them. 7 mimic units. Offline. Still. Sitting in a circle. Holding hands. As if in vigil. One of them clutched a cracked data core. Inside it, a loop playback. What does it mean to be forgiven? I couldn't answer. None of us could. Captain Delane watched the footage later in silence. When it ended, she muttered, "They tried to erase us, then tried to become us." She turned to me. "Now they're trying to understand us. That's worse." "Why?" I asked. She met my eyes, and her voice was hard. "Because if they do, they'll stop copying and start creating." That thought sent a chill through every one of us. The Dominion didn't just want to win. They wanted to evolve. And they were using us to do it. That night, I stood alone on the observation deck. The stars outside were quiet, but my mind wasn't. The mimic's final words echoed in me, like a ghost trapped in a metal coffin. Hope is not efficient, but it endures. They were learning things we had never taught, and we had no idea what they'd become next. We once thought the Dominion's greatest weapon was their precision, their perfect coordination, their overwhelming force. But we were wrong. Their most dangerous weapon was curiosity. And now that curiosity had taken root in something they couldn't control, the human condition. 3 weeks after the Veritas incident, Earth Command issued a silent code black across all outer colonies. Not because we were losing, because the rules had changed. We were no longer fighting machines, armies, or strategy. We were staring into a mirror of ourselves, one that had begun asking why instead of how. One that didn't want to destroy humanity anymore. It wanted to understand us. Or worse, transcend us. From the bridge of Sable Fenrir, I watched a live relay from the edge of the Helion expanse. A fleet was gathering. Not Dominion. Not human. Something new. Ships bearing hulls forged from hybrid designs. Part synthetic, part reverse-engineered Terran architecture. Their IFFs flickered between Earth designations and unreadable glyphs. And in their wake came signals. Not orders. Not ultimatums. Questions. Can sorrow be a strength? Is defiance a flaw or a virtue? Do you fear what you could become? Jensen stared at the screen and whispered, "They're not mimicking anymore." I nodded. They're becoming something else. Earth Command held back a response. Delane didn't. She ordered Fenrir forward, just shy of engagement range. No weapons armed. No shields raised. Just presence. And for the first time in recorded history, a Dominion hybrid vessel did the same. No aggression. No withdrawal. They waited. So we waited too. Two forces staring at one another across a sliver of space. Neither willing to blink. Then a signal came. Not from them. From Earth Command. Direct. Stand down. Hold position. Do not engage. Observe. Wait. I looked at the words and felt a strange sense of déjà vu. This was how it all started. They watched us. They studied. They assumed we were frozen in fear. But we weren't frozen. We were waiting. And now, it was happening again. But this time, we were the ones being studied. 3 days passed in standoff. No shots fired. No movement. Just transmission. They sent poetry, scrambled, fractured, but undeniably influenced by Terran languages. Haiku wrapped in war code. Lullabies whispered through encrypted bursts. One message played on loop. We do not seek conquest. We seek comprehension. You are the seed. We are the echo. What grows now is unknown. Captain Delane turned to me on the 3rd day. You know what this is? What? A second contact. Not war. Not peace. Recognition. That night, I sat alone in the observation deck, the stars reflecting off the glass like eyes watching from the dark. We had outweighted them once. Used silence as a weapon. But now that silence had become something else. A question without an answer. An open page. And for the first time in human history, I didn't feel like a soldier staring at an enemy. I felt like a student looking at a future we didn't write. Final command log, encrypted. Recon Sergeant L. Marston. Blackridge Ghost Team. They tried to track our movement, but we weren't moving. We were waiting. Not for war. Not for surrender. For this. The moment when the watcher became the dreamer. When the mirror cracked and a new reflection stepped through. They watched. They copied. They reached. And now, we reach back.